Welcome to Designing Purpose, your guide to finding and pursuing the career you were meant for, with me, life and career coach Brooke Cretz. Want to know the scariest part about leaving your job? The unknowing of what's next. But what if it were possible to leave the job you hate and pursue something that feeds your soul while still meeting your financial goals? On Designing Purpose, I will guide you step by step to leave jobs that no longer serve you and connect to the career and life you were meant for. Join in for powerful stories, examples, and guidance to go from feeling stuck in the unknowing to confidently transitioning to your next career. The Designing Purpose show starts now. So let's imagine that you're in an escape room. In an escape room, all of the clues are already present, and it's up to you to identify, interpret, and put them all together in unique combinations to gain freedom or your escape. Escape rooms can feel challenging because there is so much information present, and it might be uncertain as to what everything means and how it all fits together. But the thing about them is you didn't have to make up or invent any of the clues or information. It's all been there the entire time, ready and waiting for you to discover the unique codes to gain your freedom. The very same thing is true when it comes to connecting to our purposes, that juicy and elusive what we are meant to do to complement our why, our who we want to work with, and our how we want to work from our last episode. It's easy to feel like your purpose is this looming, enigmatic, unreachable thing that you'll never figure out and that you have to create and configure it into existence. It feels like we have to build the puzzle, making sure every single detail is perfectly accounted for and aligns with our greatest possible potential. But actually, this isn't the case at all. And in fact, your purpose is already within you and has been known by some part of you since the day you were born. Let me say that again. Your purpose is not something you need to create, to force, or to project into being, like we so often seem to feel it is. It is right there within you and has been for your entire life. But it gets stuck under everything else we encounter to the point where we either forget or never really take the time to ask ourselves what it was. And the thing is, if we look at what discovering your purpose is on paper, we find that it's actually incredibly simple. In fact, the exercises I'm going to take you through today could be done in a less than 4 hours workshop. Seriously. Depending on what time of day you're watching this episode, you could have your purpose all spelled out in time for dinner tonight. So then, why do we feel like it's so enigmatic and complicated? Why do we hire coaches and spend months, if not years, working through how we discover and pursue our core purpose? And why do many of us feel that whatever we're meant to do is simply so out of reach? When coaching clients come to me, they often feel so lost, defeated, exhausted, and miserable in their previous roles that they have little to no idea what they would do next. No idea what that perfect melding of their strengths would look like. And this unknowing can be absolutely terrifying. But our job in this case is not to create their purpose. It's to uncover it. Because I know that it's in there if we give ourselves permission to detach from all the reasons we've held ourselves back from discovering and pursuing it in the first place. Think about it. How many narratives, beliefs, ideas, standard operating procedures, assumptions, and associations ricochet around our minds every single day? Oh, I would do that, but I need a certification, a master's degree, and I don't really have the bandwidth to go back to school. Or, there are already so many podcasts, shows, programs, content out there. Why would we need any more? Or, look at so-and-so doing that thing I secretly want to, but tell myself isn't for me. Geez, how conceited are they, thinking that anyone cares what they have to say? And where do all these narratives come from? typically from experiences where you felt hurt or wounded. Someone, or perhaps multiple people somewhere down the line, either directly or indirectly, might have made you feel like you actually weren't meant to do what you thought you were. Maybe you were a little kid dreaming of being a writer when a teacher told you that you had a lot to improve on. And you internalized this as, I shouldn't even bother to try and risk the embarrassment. Maybe you loved playing soccer and dreamed of becoming a future soccer star. But once you started playing at the high school level, your coach told you she didn't think you had what it took. You didn't feel it was worth it in case you let the team down. So you told your family you weren't really that into soccer anymore. Maybe you spent your days soaking up books and documentaries on the fascinating laws of physics, dreaming of one day being paid to spend your days immersed in studying and experimenting, only to be told that the only jobs for people interested in physics were either a physicist or a professor, for which you'd have to go to school for 7+ years. And that wasn't what you saw for yourself. So you chose something more safe. And that's the thing. In these cases, there were several strong clues about what each of these individuals was meant for. And maybe they weren't meant to be a star or professional in their fields. But the thought of not seeing a pathway for that made them stop altogether. And in some cases, forget or bury their love for it by convincing themselves and others that it was no longer for them. And in some cases, even denigrating other people who did what they wanted to do. And this is the episode where we connect back to those, not just as a sum of their parts, but with love, compassion, and understanding that there will likely be resistance that comes up in remembering and connecting back to these pieces of yourself. There will be confusion and frustration when we can't see how all of the aspects of us fit together in a beautiful and seamless role or identity that we can confidently explain to others. There may be hurt and regret around not pursuing them earlier, or even sadness that you abandoned parts of yourself that you loved so much at one time. But if you are willing and open to sit with all of that, what I can absolutely promise you there will be is wholeness, freedom, peace, joy, and excitement. And also you, the whole, true, authentic you. No pushing or forcing necessary. And most importantly, this knowledge will provide you with a confident path forward to pursuing the career you were meant for and impacting others in the ways only you can. Something many of us have been hungering and searching for years, decades, or perhaps our whole lives. Even though it's hard, even though our brains might find a million reasons to resist or revolt against it, I'm with you. In today's episode, we are going to move through a 3-part process to connect with your unique purpose, role, or identity, which involves identifying your passions, strengths, values, and energy drivers in order to connect to the whole you. Interpreting this information by spotting patterns and gaining insights to what this means for your purpose. And finally, integrating it all into your purpose role, which we will spend the remaining episodes of this series pursuing. And because this episode will likely hit close to home for many of you, I want us to personalize it by moving through an illustrative example of someone discovering her purpose, who we will call Leah. And as we move through these exercises, using Leah as our example, I want you to honestly answer this one question by the end of the episode. Can I detach from the experiences that feel wounded, hurtful, or confusing to make space for the identification, interpretation, and integration of all that I am to discover my true core purpose? Let's get started. We want to make sure we get you to dinner on time. So when I work with clients, I first ask them to begin classifying all of their passions, strengths, energy drivers, and values. Remember the escape room? All of the clues were already hidden within the room. It's just a matter of laying them all out and putting them together. This is the time when we are laying out all the many clues of your purpose strewn throughout your life. I like to begin with passions. A lot of times we act like passions are just things we do for fun, or that they don't really go well together, or that other people are already doing what we love better than we are. But typically, the things in life that we are really drawn towards, in some cases inexplicably, can often tell us the most about ourselves. Use this time to revisit all the things you felt drawn to as a kid, the groups and clubs you pursued, assuming it was of your own choice and you enjoyed them. What drew you to the classes you took in high school, the major you chose, and the things you spent your free time doing. But most importantly, look for patterns. Oftentimes, our passions come back in various forms without us even being very aware or cognizant of them. For example, maybe you loved to dance growing up, and as you got older, you were drawn to public speaking. And then one day, you started your own YouTube show. Those all seem a bit dissimilar, but they are actually a pattern of a performer. You guys totally guess that was me, right? Let's use Leah's example. As Leah began moving through her life and remembering things she loved, she began listing the following. As a kid, Leah loved writing and would fill her notebooks with different stories, characters, and ideas for series. As she grew older, she realized she was a talented communicator and felt comfortable speaking and conveying complex ideas to others. This led her to an interest in strategy and supporting small businesses. Leah was also a very adventurous and fun-loving soul. She felt drawn to travel very early on in life and loved bringing people together to do new and interesting things. To this day, she is always the one who hosts and organizes parties, events, and holidays for her friends and family. But even writing this out was hard for Leah because she experienced some woundedness around it. She was denied for a creative writing program she had really wanted to pursue in college, and soon writing became all about impressing people and producing perfectly well-reasoned reports for business school. Since she lost the fun, joy, and spark around writing, it's difficult for her to even express that she was once passionate about it, especially since she now judges people she knows who have written books and articles for major publications. She wants to resist these aspects of herself, but if she can detach long enough to get it all down, we see that Leah has an undeniable passion for creating and expressing through different mediums, supporting and bringing people together, and exploring what the world has to offer. This is the first set of clues in our puzzle. The next set involves our strengths. The vague, awkward, and overused question in every job interview. What would you say are your greatest strengths? Let's just agree that this is a weird question, okay? And honestly, not a very useful one. Because what does it ultimately tell us, really? Instead of looking at this through a broad and unhelpful lens, let's instead look at it in two parts. First, what comes really easy to you that you would assume it's the same for anyone else? To me, this is one of the greatest demonstrations of your strengths, but often gets overlooked because we think it's just as easy for everyone else. Let's look at what Leah said for this one. When she started reflecting on who she was as a kid, in school, and in jobs, Leah came up with these 6 things that have always come incredibly easy for her. Imagining creative ways of doing things, speaking without preparation, understanding and connecting with how people think, explaining complicated information simply, connecting and weaving together themes, and communicating succinctly. As Leah wrote these, some frustration came up because she had tried in so many jobs to shake things up and try new ways of communicating and expressing ideas and ways of doing things, which other people often didn't get or weren't receptive to, which made her feel like it wasn't even worth trying. However, if we detach from this, these already provide strong themes about how naturally talented of a communicator, empathizer, and sense maker of information Leah is. So let's take it one step further by also examining, what are you good at offering other people by virtue of your character? A few years back, I discovered the incredible and free VIA character assessment, which analyzes your relative strengths among 24 different universal character traits. These character strengths include appreciation of beauty and excellence, love of learning, perseverance, perspective, social intelligence, spirituality, teamwork, and zest for life. I find this to be a beautiful assessment to better understand which traits we most emulate and how that can be helpful to others around us. When Leah took this assessment, she found that her predominant character strengths were kindness, creativity, perspective, leadership, and humor. So now let's put this together with the things that came easy for her. Leah has a clear strength for effective and heartfelt communication, conveying ideas creatively, and offering all of this to others by virtue of her perspective, leadership, and humor. Once your passions and strengths have been identified, it's time to move to what naturally motivates you or gives you energy. When working with people, I like to frame this as, when do you find yourself in states of flow, like nothing else matters? For Leah, this looks like hosting people, solving a kind of puzzle, connecting with someone, imagining new scenes and stories, feeling like she can capture someone else's feelings, creating something that hasn't really been done, and thinking of interesting ways to communicate something. The second thing I ask people to consider when thinking about this is, what conditions provide you with that ultimate energy? And for Leah, this one was very simple and straightforward. She always felt most energized being out with people, talking about and sharing ideas, and collaborating with others. And even though these all felt very true, writing them out brought up some sadness and shame in Leah, because she was always very eager to collaborate with people and try all kinds of new ideas. But she really struggled to find people who were willing to do this with her, or even had the time in their busy schedules. But if we can detach from these feelings, we see that Leah has a motivation to capture and connect with how people are feeling in new ways that entertain and challenge, while finding inspiration through collaborating on ideas with others. Finally, let's look at values. We've talked about this one quite a bit in previous episodes, and for good reason, because your values are usually pretty stable throughout your life. They tell us a lot about who you are and how they inform your greater purpose. But again, this can be a frustratingly vague exercise to complete. So I would invite you to look at the first 3 groups of things you've listed, your passions, your strengths, and your energy drivers, and examine what those tell you about what you value. As Leah examined her lists, she determined that these were emblematic of the values imagination, empathy for human spirit, humor and laughter, demonstrating possibilities, simple communication, creative collaboration, and experimentation. Even as Leah wrote these, she felt frustration and apathy because she always thought she was getting into jobs that shared these values, only to discover that in practice, that wasn't always the case. But still, she knows they are true and tell us that she has a value of imagining and demonstrating new possibilities for people using humor and empathetic storytelling made possible through creative collaboration and experimentation. Suddenly we find that all the clues have surfaced and we have a much better sense of which pieces make us up as a whole, which brings us to phase 2, interpreting the patterns and insights they yield. Now is the time where we take all the information we have, our passions, our strengths, our energy drivers, and our values, to begin grouping them together into what I'll call pillars. These pillars are going to reflect different patterns or similar data points to tell a bigger story beyond just what we like, are good at, etc. This is always my favorite part of the process because we can quickly see strong themes within ourselves we might not have expected. Let's group our pillars based on Leah's example. Leah moved through all of her data points in the 4 categories and began placing them into groupings or pillars in which she felt there was a strong narrative forming. Now, there is no right or wrong way to place these into categories. Trust yourself and your intuition to guide you. In pillar 1, she grouped writing, creating stories, and connecting and weaving themes. And she labeled this pillar storytelling. In pillar 2, she grouped speaking, strategic thinking, business support, communicating succinctly, explaining complicated information simply, speaking without preparation, thinking of interesting ways to communicate something, and simple communication, and labeled this pillar communicating ideas. In pillar 3, she grouped creativity, imagining creative ways of doing things, imagining new scenes and stories, solving a kind of puzzle, creating something that hasn't really been done, imagination, experimentation, and demonstrating possibilities. And she labeled this pillar creativity and imagination. In pillar 4, she grouped understanding and connecting with how people think, kindness, leadership, perspective, humor, feeling like she can capture someone's feelings, connecting with someone, empathy for human spirit, and humor and laughter. And she labeled this pillar helping people feel and experience kindness, perspective, and humor. And finally, in pillar 5, she grouped travel, party planning and hosting, hosting people, being out with people, collaborating with others, talking about and sharing ideas, and creative collaboration. And she labeled this final pillar with the help of my people. It's interesting, right? How we see our passions, strengths, energy drivers, and values fuse in different and unexpected ways we might not have recognized otherwise. And we see now how, much like when we can make sense of and put together different clues in an escape room, we can fit these many pieces of ourselves into meaningful and useful themes that bring us one step closer to connecting with our true purpose. And that brings us to our final phase, simply putting it all together, looking at the themes, listening to our own heart and intuition, and doing our best to detach from all the woundedness, the sadness, the frustration, the regret, or the shame that may come up when we acknowledge and accept all the multidimensional parts that make us us. And when we look at Leah's themes on paper, at first glance, they seem like they could mean absolutely anything. It can feel frustrating, much like drawing different clues together to gain freedom from an escape room, and at times make us more confused than ever about who we really are. But as Leah sees, she is the only one who knows the entire arc of her life, what has brought her to certain junctures, and how various interests have resurfaced and collided in various ways over the years. And looking at these 5 pillars, she suddenly notices a cohesive narrative forming. Leah's purpose is to express stories by communicating ideas in creative and imaginative ways to help people feel and experience kindness, perspective, and humor with the help and collaboration of her own people. Still feel like a big bag of nonsense to you? Not to Leah. As she checks in with what her heart is telling her, she remembers how much she has always connected with the film industry and how she's been drawn to drama and theater to communicate interesting stories. This lights something up in Leah as she realizes what she really wants to do, what her purpose is, and what she is meant for is to be a screenwriter. Even if it still feels uncertain, scary, and vulnerable, with this information in mind, Leah can combine this purpose, this reason for being, with her why, her who, and her how from the last episode, and officially begin experimenting with roles as she pursues her next career move. Now that we've seen how we can use the clues of our lives to identify, interpret, and integrate all that we are into our core purpose, let's go back to the question from the beginning of the episode. Can I detach from the experiences that feel wounded, hurtful, or confusing to make space for the identification, interpretation, and integration of all that I am to discover my true core purpose? Can you welcome back the things you once forgot, cast aside, or felt you weren't good enough for, or weren't realistic, and accept them as not only part of who you are, but of your incredible mission here on this earth? I promise you, they've been waiting for you this entire time. And we've all been waiting for you too. In the coming episodes, we will talk so much more about this, including facilitating confidence and readiness for the resistance that might come up when we lean into our purpose, developing experimentation plans as you make your way towards your next professional move, and getting super clear on your vision, target markets, and where you want to position yourself moving forward. As always, I am so excited to be with you on this journey. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. You have been listening to Designing Purpose, your guide to finding and pursuing the career you were meant for. If you are curious to navigate the unknowns keeping you stuck in your job and confidently discover and pursue the career you were meant for, tune in every second and fourth Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where I give straightforward and practical guidance to facilitate your next career move. For more information, visit www.thepurposefulpractice.com.